What happens when the king of late-night comedy faces America's most polarizing figure, not with laughter, but with accusation? What happens when the stage built for sketches, impersonations, and applause suddenly becomes a courtroom, with the ghost of a Hollywood legend presiding as judge? Tonight, The Tonight Show is no longer entertainment. It is a trial under the brightest lights television can offer. Robert Redford is gone. The actor, the activist, the voice of American conscience has taken his final bow. But before the curtain fell, he left behind words that reverberate like thunder across the political landscape. He called Donald Trump a breeding ground for dictatorship. He called him a threat to democracy itself. Not whispered, not implied, spoken aloud. A parting shot sharper than any script he ever delivered. And now, those words hover over Rockefeller Center like a ghost demanding an answer. Donald Trump, never one to shy away from confrontation, has agreed to appear. His crimson tie blazes like a banner of defiance, his face carved into that familiar smirk that has weathered scandal after scandal. Across from him sits Jimmy Fallon, the man America once called harmless, the clown prince of late-night television. But tonight, Fallon is not playing the fool. Tonight, he is sharpened steel, armed not with punchlines, but with Redford's legacy. The audience feels it in their bones, the tension, the unease, the sense that something irreversible is about to happen. The Tonight Show, the land of laughter, has become a crucible. And in this crucible, Donald Trump is not the guest, he is the defendant. The cameras zoom in. Fallon's fingers tap his cue cards like a gavel striking wood. Redford's photograph glows on the giant screen behind them, his calm eyes unblinking, eternal. The nation holds its breath. Because tonight, the laughter dies. Tonight, America doesn't watch a talk show. It watches a reckoning. The Tonight Show studio has never looked like this before. The usual carnival of colors, the playful glow that paints the stage in warmth, is gone. In its place is a cooler, somber palette. Solemn blues, steel grays, shadows that cling to the corners of the room like silent jurors. The band, normally a burst of rhythm and cheer, sits frozen, instruments gleaming under the lights but untouched. Not a note escapes. Tonight, even music dares not interfere. At the center of it all lies the desk, polished to a mirror sheen. It reflects the overhead spotlights in long, sharp streaks that look less like entertainment and more like interrogation lamps. Every inch of the set feels deliberate, stripped of comfort, transformed into something closer to a tribunal than a talk show. Behind the desk, Jimmy Fallon leans forward. His suit is darker than usual, cut sharper, his tie perfectly knotted as though dressing for court. His usual playfulness is nowhere to be seen. Instead, his jaw is tight, his gaze steady, the cue cards in his hand less like notes and more like evidence. His body leans toward the confrontation, like a prosecutor preparing the opening statement of a trial that history will replay. Across from him, Donald Trump occupies the guest chair, the way a lion might occupy a cage too large, too restless, too unwilling to be contained. His tie, a streak of crimson, burns against the backdrop, a color both defiant and dangerous. His hair gleams gold under the spotlights, his smirk practiced, but his eyes sharp, restless, betray awareness of the moment's weight. He knows this is not simply another interview. This is spectacle sharpened into reckoning. And looming above them all, presiding like a silent arbiter, the screen, a black and white portrait of Robert Redford gazes down, eternal and unwavering. The eyes are calm, but cutting. To the audience, it feels as if Redford himself watches, a ghostly judge in the theater of democracy. His final words, Trump as a threat, a breeding ground for dictatorship, echo silently in every mind present. The audience fills every seat, but their energy is strange, uncertain. They clap out of instinct when cameras pan across them, but it is a hollow applause, quickly dying down. They sense this is not their role tonight. They are not spectators, they are witnesses. Witnesses to a duel that feels larger than any late-night comedy could contain. The lights sharpen, narrowing beams that isolate Fallon and Trump, as though the rest of the world has faded. Two men, one desk, one ghost, one truth waiting to be unearthed. Tonight, The Tonight Show has been stripped bare, dressed not for laughter, but for judgment. The cameras cut closer, pulling the viewers at home into the crucible. Jimmy Fallon inhales slowly, his trademark grin flickering across his face, but it's different tonight. It's not the boyish, goofy smile that usually disarms guests and tickles audiences. This one is thinner, tauter, like a mask stretched over tension. "Mr. President," Fallon begins, his voice measured, restrained. "Thank you for joining us." The audience claps automatically, but the sound is short-lived, as if no one is sure whether it's appropriate to cheer. Trump nods, leaning back with the practiced confidence of a man who has walked into countless rooms expecting to dominate them. The crimson tie lies across his chest like a banner, his lips curling into that familiar smirk. "Jimmy," he replies, voice smooth but edged, "always a pleasure. You've been entertaining over the years. Sometimes funny, sometimes not, but always harmless." The words hang in the air, coded in condescension. A few chuckles ripple through the audience, nervous, brittle. Fallon laughs too, but it's a laugh without joy, without surrender. "Harmless," he echoes, as if tasting the word. He leans forward, placing his cue cards on the desk with deliberate care. "Well, tonight might not feel so harmless." Trump waves a hand dismissively, the gesture grand, theatrical. "I've handled far worse. I've handled impeachment trials, witch hunts, fake news. Believe me, Jimmy, you're not going to scare me. I've carried heavier burdens than jokes." Fallon's gaze sharpens, his smile evaporating into something colder. "Tonight," he says softly, "the burden isn't a joke. Tonight, the burden is truth." The air in the room shifts. The audience stops shifting in their seats. Even the cameras seem to still, as if reluctant to miss a breath. Trump tilts his head, eyes narrowing, smirk lingering but less assured. He taps the armrest of his chair, a small, restless rhythm. "Truth," he repeats, dragging the word. "Funny thing about truth, everyone thinks they own it. Robert Redford thought he did too." Fallon doesn't blink. He lets the silence stretch, the audience caught in its grip. Then, with the precision of a man who knows the ground is shifting beneath them both, he delivers the line that snaps the illusion of civility. "Then, let's talk about Robert Redford." The smile freezes on Trump's face. The ghost has been summoned into the room. Fallon doesn't waste a second. The cards remain untouched on the desk. This is no scripted banter. His eyes lock on Trump's, steady, unflinching. The studio feels colder. "Robert Redford." Fallon begins, voice low but sharp. "Wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol. He was America's conscience on screen. And before he died, he said this about you, that you were a breeding ground for dictatorship, a threat to democracy itself. Do you deny those words, Mr. Trump?" The air thickens. The audience leans forward unconsciously, like jurors straining to catch every syllable. Trump shifts in his seat, his hand gripping the armrest. Then, with a dismissive chuckle, he tries to wrap levity around the gravity. "Robert Redford was a movie guy, Jimmy. A good actor, maybe one of the best, but he was reading scripts his whole life. Maybe this was just another script, another performance. And let's face it, actors, they don't run the world. I did. I do." Gasps ripple across the studio. Some laugh nervously, others shake their heads in disbelief. Fallon doesn't move, doesn't blink. His tone sharpens. "A script? You think those were lines?" He wasn't pretending, Mr. Trump. He wasn't playing a role. He was speaking as a citizen, as a man who cared about the country, and his words cut through millions like a verdict. Trump raises a hand, gesturing broadly as if brushing away dust. "People have said worse. They said I couldn't win in 2016. They said I couldn't fix the economy. They said I wouldn't survive impeachment. They said I wouldn't survive fake indictments. Guess what? They were wrong every single time. I'm still here, Jimmy. Stronger than ever. Fallon leans in, voice edged like a blade. Or maybe you're still here, not because you're stronger, but because the system you're accused of threatening still protects you. The words slice through the silence. The audience stirs, the weight of the confrontation pressing down. Trump's jaw tightens, his smirk faltering just slightly. The photo of Robert Redford looms behind him, eyes unblinking, eternal. For the first time tonight, Trump looks smaller under the lights. Fallon doesn't let the silence linger for long. He knows momentum is everything. And tonight, the weight of Redford's words hangs over the studio like a storm cloud. He leans forward, his elbows resting on the desk, his voice sharpening with each syllable. Mr. Trump, Robert Redford wasn't the first. Scholars, journalists, even members of your own party have accused you of something bigger than politics. They say you've chipped away at democracy itself. You call it fake news, but how many times can democracy be called fake before people stop believing in it? The audience murmurs, some nodding, others shifting uneasily. The question cuts deep. Trump raises his hand, his index finger stabbing the air. His voice rises, filling the room like a cannon blast. Jimmy, the liars are in the media. That's the real threat to democracy. The censorship, the silencing, the cancel culture, that's dictatorship, not me. I gave people their voice back. I made America proud again. Redford, God rest him, fell for the same con. He played heroes, but he didn't understand the real world. I lived in the real world. I built towers, jobs, an America that worked. Fallon doesn't blink. His tone is ice, his words calculated like a scalpel. And yet, in the real world, millions believe you pushed the nation to the brink. January 6th wasn't a movie, Mr. Trump. It was a wound on democracy, a wound still bleeding. Trump's face flushes, his hand slapping the armrest, the sound echoing through the hushed studio. I told them to protest peacefully. Peacefully! The media twisted it like they twist everything. You twist everything. Fallon leans closer, the studio lights catching the glint in his eyes. His voice drops lower, forcing the audience to lean in. Peacefully or powerfully? Which word mattered more that day, Mr. Trump? Because history is still deciding. And Redford's warning? It sounds a lot less like fiction and a lot more like prophecy. The audience gasps. Some clap hesitantly. Others remain frozen, their faces pale under the blue studio glow. Trump's smirk is gone now. In its place is a taut jaw, narrowed eyes, and the unmistakable flicker of unease. Trump leans forward now, his voice booming, rattling against the polished wood of Fallon's desk. This is ridiculous. You're a comedian, Jimmy. A late-night clown. You think quoting Robert Redford makes you a truth-teller? He acted like heroes. I lived like one. I faced down world leaders. I built an economy stronger than ever. I stood against China, against NATO freeloaders, against everyone who wanted to weaken America. Millions of people still love me. Millions. The audience shifts, the tension slicing the air. Some clap, defiant, while others hiss, their disapproval audible even through the tight studio acoustics. Fallon doesn't move. His posture is still, his eyes fixed like a predator, watching prey wear itself out. Robert Redford loved democracy, Mr. Trump, Fallon replies, his tone low but sharp, each word deliberate. That's why his words cut so deep. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't running for office. He spoke as an American who saw a danger, and his final words weren't about movies or scripts. They were about you. A wave of applause breaks out, louder this time, sharper, a crack of judgment in the room. Trump stiffens, his lips tightening into a sneer. He jabs a finger toward Fallon. Democracy doesn't mean letting Hollywood elites tell the rest of us how to live. Redford played journalists. He wasn't one. He played presidents. He wasn't one. I was. I am. Fallon tilts his head, smile faint but cutting. You were president, Mr. Trump. You were in power. But you speak of yourself in the past tense, and I wonder why is that? Is it because history's already written its verdict? Because Redford's warning has already started to take root? The audience murmurs again, the sound like distant thunder. Trump leans back, crossing his arms in defiance, but his eyes betray him. The confidence flickers, just for a moment, as if the question has struck a nerve. Fallon doesn't need to press further. The silence is enough. Trump's bravado has met its first fracture. Fallon sets his cue cards down on the desk. The gesture is small, almost casual, but it sends a chill through the room. He no longer needs notes. His words, sharpened by conviction, are enough. The cameras zoom tighter, capturing the flicker in Trump's eyes, the tightening of his jaw. You've been accused of more than controversy, Mr. Trump, Fallon begins, his voice low, steady. You've been accused of eroding truth itself, of turning lies into currency, of building power not on unity, but on division. That's not politics, that's demolition. And Robert Redford saw it. He named it. He warned us about you. The audience is silent now, the kind of silence that feels heavy, suffocating. Trump's face flushes. He leans forward, stabbing the air with his finger. Division? Lies? The lies come from your side, Jimmy. From CNN, from the New York Times, from every fake news outlet out there. Redford was no saint. He was just another Hollywood liberal, reading the same tired script, hating me because I stood for America. Fallon doesn't flinch. He shakes his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. No, Mr. Trump. Redford didn't just play heroes on screen. He believed in truth when it mattered. He stood up against corruption, against abuse of power. He spent his life warning us about men who thought they could bend democracy to their will. And his last words, his very last words, named you as that danger. The screen behind them flickers, showing Redford's black and white portrait, his calm gaze burning through time. The audience shifts, the weight of the image pressing down on them like judgment from beyond the grave. Trump slams his palm lightly on the desk, the sound echoing like a crack of thunder. Warnings don't scare me. Warnings are for weak men. I've never been weak. I survived everything they threw at me. Mueller, impeachment, the media mob. I'm still here, stronger than ever. Fallon leans closer, his voice suddenly softer, but sharper than a blade. Every dictator says the same thing, Mr. Trump. Stronger than ever until the truth catches up. The words hang in the air, electrified, impossible to ignore. The studio darkens almost imperceptibly, the spotlights narrowing until only two figures remain illuminated. Jimmy Fallon, sharp and steady, and Donald Trump, tense in his chair. Behind them, Robert Redford's portrait dominates the screen, his eyes unyielding, frozen in monochrome judgment. Trump glances at the image. It's only a flicker, a heartbeat, but it's enough. The bravado wavers. The mask slips. His hand grips the armrest tighter, knuckles whitening. The audience senses it, like animals catching the scent of blood. Fallon strikes at the opening. His voice lowers, steady, deliberate. Do you see him, Mr. Trump? Do you see Robert Redford, the man who spent his life telling stories about truth, about justice, about power held accountable? And do you understand what it means that his last story was you? Trump's jaw tightens. He leans forward, trying to force the smirk back onto his lips, but it falters halfway. I don't take lectures from dead actors, he growls, voice harsher now, stripped of polish. A collective gasp sweeps through the studio. The words land heavy, sacrilegious. Fallon doesn't flinch. He tilts his head slightly, his voice soft but cutting, like a scalpel carving away pretense. Not even when those actors spoke truths that outlived them? The silence is unbearable. The audience shifts in their seats, eyes darting between Fallon, Trump, and the looming ghost of Redford. Trump adjusts his tie, his movements restless, betraying the unease etched across his face. His usual arsenal jokes, dismissals, bravado suddenly feels dull, ineffective under the weight of legacy. Fallon leans in further, his words measured, his gaze unwavering. This isn't about Redford's career, Mr. Trump. It's not about Hollywood or politics or ratings. It's about whether his final words will be remembered as exaggeration or prophecy. The audience holds its breath. Trump opens his mouth, but no words come immediately. For a man who has always commanded every room, silence is his most dangerous enemy. And tonight, that silence belongs not to him, but to Robert Redford, watching from the shadows of memory. The tide has turned. For the first time in this confrontation, Trump looks less like a master of the stage and more like a man cornered by ghosts. Fallon senses the weakness, the flicker in Trump's armor, and he doesn't hesitate. He leans forward, his voice dropping low, deliberate, every syllable meant to cut. Would you admit, here and now, that Robert Redford was right? That your hunger for power, your disregard for truth, your endless grievances don't make America stronger, they make it fragile. The words land, like a hammer blow. The audience gasps audibly, the air sucked from the room. All eyes fix on Trump. Trump explodes. His body lurches forward, hands slamming the armrests, his voice booming with fury. I made America great again. I gave people jobs, I secured the border, I rebuilt the military. Robert Redford? He was jealous, bitter, irrelevant. He played heroes. I lived as one. Millions of people still want me back. Millions. His voice ricochets off the walls, desperate and defiant. A thunderclap meant to drown out doubt. Fallon doesn't blink. His reply is ice. Or maybe they don't want you, Mr. Trump. Maybe they want the myth of you. And maybe Redford was right. Maybe that myth is the real danger. The audience erupts not in laughter, not in applause, but in murmurs that swell like a rising storm. Some cheer, some boo, others simply sit frozen, unable to process the collision unfolding before them. Trump points at Fallon, finger trembling with rage. You'll regret this, Jimmy. You'll regret disrespecting me on national television. Nobody talks to me like this. Nobody. Fallon leans back slightly, his voice calm, steady, the counterpoint to Trump's storm. The only thing to regret, Mr. Trump, is what history will say about you. Because history doesn't bow. It doesn't fear. It remembers. The lights seem to burn hotter, the stage itself vibrating with tension. Trump's chest rises and falls rapidly, his smirk completely gone, replaced with raw anger. Fallon sits like stone, unyielding, his gaze never leaving the man across from him. The clash has reached its peak. This is no longer an interview. It is a battlefield, and Robert Redford's ghost is the unseen general presiding over it. The words hang in the air like smoke after an explosion. The studio, once the home of laughter and applause, is now a tomb of silence. The audience doesn't cheer, doesn't clap, doesn't even shift in their seats. They sit frozen, as though carved in stone, staring at the man who once commanded arenas with a single phrase. Trump grips the armrests of his chair, his knuckles pale, his face flushed crimson under the unforgiving lights. His chest heaves with each breath, the fury inside him straining to find release. For the first time tonight, his legendary bravado, his shield, his weapon is faltering. The cameras zoom in, catching every detail. The twitch of his jaw, the bead of sweat crawling down his temple, the fire in his eyes dimming just slightly under the weight of the moment. For decades, Trump thrived on control. Control of the stage, of the audience, of the story. But tonight, control is slipping. Tonight, the narrative is no longer his. Fallon sits in silence, refusing to break it, his expression a mirror of calm resolve. He doesn't need words now. His stillness is louder than any monologue he's ever delivered. His eyes bore into Trump, steady, unblinking, Like a prosecutor watching a witness crumble. The band remains frozen, instruments untouched, as if even a single note would desecrate the gravity of what's unfolding. The lights seem harsher now, cutting through every shadow, exposing everything Trump has tried to hide behind performance. The audience feels it too. They've laughed at Trump, they've cheered him, they've jeered him. But tonight, they are witnesses to something else entirely. The unraveling of a man's myth in real time. The spectacle is raw, uncomfortable, unforgettable. Trump shifts in his chair, his lips parting as if to speak, but no words come. The silence is his enemy now, wrapping around him tighter with every passing second. For a man who built his empire on constant noise, tweets, chants, headlines, silence is the most devastating verdict of all. Jimmy Fallon finally breaks the silence. His voice is low, deliberate, every word falling like the strike of a gavel. Robert Redford believed democracy was fragile, he says. His eyes locked on Trump. He believed it could be weakened not by enemies abroad, but by voices within voices, louder than truth, hungrier than justice. Before he left this world, he named you as one of those voices. The audience leans forward, breathless. Fallon doesn't blink, doesn't smile. His cue cards lie untouched on the desk, as if the trial has already moved beyond the need for notes. You've called yourself a builder, Mr. Trump. You've built towers, businesses, even a movement. But Redford's last words suggest you've built something else too. Division, distrust, fear. And those aren't the foundations of a nation. They're the cracks that bring one down. Trump shifts, his lips tightening into a thin line. For once, he doesn't interrupt. He sits, rigid, forced into silence by the weight of the moment. Fallon presses on, his tone firm but not triumphant, like a man delivering judgment, not gloating. This is the Tonight Show. People come here to laugh, to escape, to forget the world for an hour. But tonight, it became something else. Tonight, this stage turned into a crucible. Tonight, it proved that words outlive us. The audience erupts, not with laughter, not with cheers, but with applause that feels heavier, deeper, more final. Some clap tentatively, others rise to their feet, the sound swelling until it fills the room like a verdict echoing from the rafters. Trump sits still, face taut, eyes burning but lips sealed. The cameras catch him perfectly framed, the once unshakable titan now dwarfed by the shadow of a dead man's words and a host unwilling to play the fool. Fallon gathers his cards neatly, aligning the edges like a judge closing a file. He looks into the camera, his voice steady. Robert Redford, rest in peace. Your words still speak. Your truth still stands. And in that moment, the verdict is clear. The studio lights dim, one by one, until the familiar brightness of The Tonight Show is reduced to two stark spotlights, one on Jimmy Fallon, the other on Donald Trump. Everything else dissolves into shadow. The band is motionless, their instruments silent, the audience hushed, as if they too have been absorbed into the silence of a verdict delivered. Behind them, the towering screen flickers. The image of Robert Redford fades slowly into black and white, his eyes fixed, his expression calm, yet unyielding. It feels less like a tribute and more like judgment immortalized. For a moment, it is as though Redford himself presides over the stage, his ghostly presence casting a weight too heavy to ignore. Trump sits rigid, his shoulders squared, his chin raised defiantly. Yet beneath the glare of the spotlight, he looks smaller, diminished. His crimson tie, once a banner of defiance, seems muted, the color drained by the starkness of the moment. He glances toward the audience, perhaps searching for support, for a spark of applause or laughter. None comes. Their eyes are fixed, unblinking, on the figure who once commanded rallies and headlines, now cornered in the stillness of a late-night studio. Fallon exhales, leaning back in his chair, the tension in his frame softening at last. The trial is over. and he knows it. He lifts his gaze to the camera, speaking not to Trump, not to the crowd in the room, but to the millions watching at home. "Rest in peace, Robert Redford," he says, his voice calm, steady, final. "Your truth spoke louder than fiction." The spotlight over Fallon fades, leaving only Trump illuminated, alone, framed against the darkness. The audience remains silent, the air electric with aftershock. Trump opens his mouth as if to speak, but no sound emerges. The cameras linger on him, capturing the silence, the crack in his unshakable persona, and then, slowly, mercilessly, the screen fades to black. The broadcast ends not with music, not with laughter, but with silence. A silence heavier than words. A silence that feels like history being written in real time. By morning, the shockwaves have already spread far beyond Rockefeller Center. The confrontation is everywhere, splashed across news tickers, replayed in endless loops on cable networks, dissected in real time on social media. Clips of Trump's clenched fists, Fallon's cutting stare, and Redford's looming black and white portrait dominate feeds. Every second of the exchange is being slowed down, paused, rewound, reanalyzed. Hashtags trend globally. Fallon vs. Trump, Redford Truth, Tonight Show Trial. On Twitter, some call Fallon a hero, who finally spoke what others were afraid to say. Others brand him a traitor, accusing him of ambushing a former president in the name of ratings. The divide is sharp, a digital battlefield, reflecting the fractures already running through the country. Cable news splits the night into narratives. On MSNBC, pundits describe Fallon's line, "Words outlive us," as a cultural milestone, a moment when late-night comedy became political history. On Fox News, hosts decry the spectacle as a kangaroo court, accusing Fallon of weaponizing Redford's death for cheap applause. CNN runs the footage on repeat, their analysts pointing out the precise second Trump's bravado cracked. And then there are the op-eds. Late Night Justice, The Ghost of Redford, Trump's silent defeat. Writers scrambled to frame the night as not just entertainment, but history. An event where America watched the myth of invincibility stumble under the gaze of a dead man's words. On TikTok, Gen Z creators splice Fallon's verdict with Redford's old movie clips, turning them into viral montages. On YouTube, commentators upload hour-long breakdowns of the confrontation, some praising Fallon's courage, others condemning him for turning grief into theater. But beneath all the noise, one question lingers. Did America just witness the moment Donald Trump's myth cracked for good? Or will the confrontation only feed his legend further? Proof to his supporters that he is strong enough to face down ghosts and critics alike. The Tonight Show, once a temple of laughter, is now etched into history as the stage of a reckoning. And Robert Redford, even in death, has managed to command the spotlight one last time. His words have outlived him, and in the quiet after the storm, they echo louder than ever. The broadcast may have ended, but the story refuses to fade. In living rooms across America, viewers sit stunned, remote controls still in hand, as if reluctant to break the silence. Online, millions rewatch the confrontation, their eyes drawn not just to Trump's fury, but to the quiet precision of Fallon's final words. It is a moment people know they will remember, like the fall of a wall, the echo of a gavel, the last words of a legend. And then comes the voiceover, calm yet resonant, the same voice that has carried the audience through this cinematic ordeal. You've just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in television history. A stage, built for laughter, became a battlefield for truth. The Tonight Show, a sanctuary for lighthearted escape, was transformed into a crucible where legacy, politics, and history collided. The words echo over flashes of the night's most haunting images. Fallon's steady gaze, Trump's clenched jaw, Redford's eternal portrait. Robert Redford's final words, his warning, were carried into this studio like a ghost, and they left Donald Trump with no place to hide. You saw the verdict. You felt the silence. And you know, deep down, that this wasn't just another late-night skit. This was history unfolding in real time. The voice sharpens, urging the audience toward action. If you believe in stories that matter, in truth that refuses to die, in moments where power trembles under the weight of words, then don't just watch. Be part of it. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Ring the notification bell so you never miss another reckoning, another clash, another night where culture and politics collide under the lights. The screen pulses with the familiar YouTube end slate subscribe button glowing red, thumbnails teasing more explosive showdowns. But the tone is different. This isn't a sales pitch. It feels like an invitation to witness history again and again. Because after tonight, one thing is clear. Entertainment can end in laughter, but sometimes it ends in truth.